A police interaction while sitting at the outdoor tables of Houghton Park in Long Beach, California. After recording the stop for approximately 4 minutes, Officer Romo of the Long Beach Police Department noticed
I've been
Mr.
watching
Guevara and initiated contact.
a lot of these videos, trying to get a hold of what's been going on with the police forces around the country. I'm getting an idea of some of the struggles that they face, the way that they treat people.
You know what? Well, since we're
Just
back in
kinda-
school, yeah, I'm a little worried about because that's what
Trying to
we're
be an
supposed
adult about things, not only watch things that incite me, but also may or may not
It does matter.
No, it doesn't.
explain a police officer's position.
Alright, doesn't matter.
Now, if you don't know me,
Okay.
I've worked alongside police officers for a long time.
It's okay.
15 years. I was never an officer myself,
Because I gotta figure
but
out
in
how
the
old you are.
capacity
You're
that I
supposed to be
worked
school now.
in, I did wear uniform, and
Well, it doesn't
I did
matter.
work alongside
matter,
police
'cause
officers.
I didn't do nothing.
I was already somewhat
Closing
sympathetic
session.
to
Okay. You
um
look like
their plight, their position, and what they're going through. But I just feel like we all need to be a little bit more educated on one, how to protect ourselves if things do go wrong, or we do run into a terrible police officer, and also see what they go through on a daily basis. Actually watch it. So in case we do have a situation where we all have to, where I have to deal with a police officer, maybe in a not so favorable condition, that I then could at least have an understanding and maybe some sympathy and some empathy towards this guy who's putting me in a rough position if I'm getting stopped by him. You know what I'm saying? Like I wanna get that in me now while I'm of sober mind and body to absorb it and it become a part of me, than me trying to muster it when I'm in the situation with an officer. So with that being said, let's continue on. Let's see what happened here. Apparently these people were arrested for being too young. Didn't know that was a crime.
you're supposed to be in school.
Well, I'm not.
Well, then how old are you?
Does it matter?
Yes, it does.
No, it doesn't.
Yes, it does.
You just told him his age.
Because I'm recording you.
That has nothing to do with it. You
Alright,
look
then why
young.
you?
I'm telling you why.
You're harassing me right
No,
now, sir.
okay, come on. Let's come on. Over
And
here.
age isn't an
Come on, let's
truly
go
like
there.
a big thing about an
Listen.
identifier. You could have gave that up.
No, let's walk over here.
Alright, for sure.
Okay.
It has nothing to do with him videotaping. That's his right to do so.
Yeah, so why he's coming over and telling me how old I am? I didn't even do nothing.
Because you look young, and I want to make
I'm
sure
not
you're
young.
supposed to be in school.
I'm
Well,
not
how
young.
old are you?
I'm just making sure y'all don't do nothing.
That's
You
fine.
look
How
young.
old are you then?
I'm old.
See,
I'm old.
I don't know. You got ID to prove it?
I do have idea, but
Okay,
I'm
let
not
me
gonna show
see.
you. I didn't do no.
All right. Come on.
I ain't
let's
do no
go.
crime. No.
I know, but until I find out, you're not supposed to be in
The
school.
whole thing.
All
Listen.
right, I'm 19. Yeah.
Okay, where's your
This is
ID?
the
I don't
old
have ID. I
person's
don't gotta
issue.
provide ID if I ain't do no crime.
This cop is too old. Everybody
Is that
looks
right or
too
not?
young to him.
No.
California is one of the few states that has no laws requiring citizens to show their ID to police prior to arrest.
Oh, they don't.
Except while
Okay,
driving.
well, fuck that
California
then.
Penal Code 148 is the state's disorderly conduct law. And according to Executive Director of the ACLU of Southern California, Hector Villagra, some law enforcement officials have attempted to use this code to arrest individuals who refuse to identify themselves under the doctrine of the 2004 Supreme Court case of Hybel versus Nevada. Director Villagra goes on to explain that the Hybel doctrine applies exclusively to states with stop and identify laws on the books, and that while the
Stop and
Hybel
frisk.
ruling is valid in places like Nevada, it does not apply in states without failure to identify laws, like California. Citizens in California are not required to present their identification to police officers, even if they are suspected of committing a crime. However, officers may still detain and investigate citizens if they have acquired reasonable suspicion. We will discuss whether the
Fair
Long
enough.
Beach officers had reasonable suspicion in a moment, but it is important to highlight the fact that Mr. Guevara was not violating the law by refusing to present his identification or state his name.
It isn't.
Appreciate him
it is
pointing
not.
that out.
Listen, if you,
Listen,
okay,
Can I have
if you
your,
let, if you
your
let,
name and your badge number?
it's right there.
And
If
your
you let
badge
me-
number?
It's 5641.
Your name, badge number?
5377.
All right.
Now, what is your name?
I don't have to
I just
provide.
asked you.
Listen, I
I
understand.
don't have to provide name. I didn't do nothing wrong.
In your opinion, you didn't. In our opinion, you did.
Like what?
And what is this wrong thing he did? Was he young?
Let me finish. You're going to interrupt me.
I don't know, cause you're.
Okay. Well,
You're
I can't answer your question.
He
if you're
came up to
interrupting.
me
Yes.
for no reason.
No, I had a reason.
I like these
What was the
California
reason?
cops, straight
I'm
jeans.
not young.
I don't
I'm about to
know
go
that.
to
You
work.
Are they detectives?
Well, then, can you prove it? You're
No,
not young?
because then you're trying to go run me in your system. Like,
What is that? I just want to make sure you're old enough.
What is he
I
doing?
told you already. I'm
Okay,
19.
What's your name?
I don't have to tell you my name. I don't have to tell you my
Is
name.
the cop
You know
recording?
that.
Oh, maybe he
I
doesn't
know
have a
it's
body
wrong.
cam.
Let me explain something to you.
You can explain everything you want, sir.
We can do this real
You have
quick.
a body cam on? No, you guys don't.
No.
You see, now it's more sketchy now. You see,
Why
I
is
don't
it more
want
sketchy? You
Cause
have your video.
You just grabbed me and took me over here.
Yeah. You
Yeah.
know what? I'm trying to get you over to my car.
I don't want you. We're fine right here talking.
Okay, then just show me
You-
your ID or
I don't
tell me your name and
I don't
birthday.
gotta show you no ID.
Yeah,
He
you do.
doesn't.
For what? For
'Cause
what
I
crime?
just explained to you.
I'm not.
'cause
I just told you. He told you
we're
he's
investigating
21.
the crime of daytime
Kid,
loitering.
you with
No,
them.
I'm with you.
What,
I'm doing
what
with
did
you.
I do?
Daytime loitering.
Oh,
Okay?
daytime loitering.
Yeah.
Daytime
Juvenile
loitering.
Daytime loitering. So I got to figure out that you're not.
That's right. How are we loitering?
Officer Romo tells Mr. Guevara that he is being investigated for daytime loitering. But according to a statement from Fox News 11 in Los Angeles, what the officer is actually referring to is Section 9.58.020 of the Long Beach Municipal Code. This code
Well, you can't
creates
expect
a
them to
daytime
remember that.
curfew between the hours of 8:30 a.m. and 1:30 p.m. for minors who are subject to compulsory education on days when school is in session. In order for Officer Romo to establish
Truancy.
reasonable suspicion, he must be able to articulate specific facts that led him to believe that Mr. Guevara was in violation of the loitering code. And he points to Mr. Guevara's youthful appearance, the fact that he has a backpack, and that he is so close to the nearby high school. It is debatable whether this evidence would satisfy the reasonable suspicion standard. However, subsection 9 of the loitering code
Bugs Young has a
resolves this
backpack
debate
close to
by
school.
creating an exception to the law if the suspected minor is engaged in a First Amendment protected activity. Along with the First, Third, Fifth, Seventh, and 11th Circuits, the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals, which presides over California, has recognized the right to record the police and deemed the act constitutionally protected under the First Amendment in the 1995 case of Fordyce
First of all, let's
versus
go
City
back
of
to that.
Seattle.
Let's
Although
see
Officer
where.
Romo may 1990 California Amendment protected activity, along with the First, Third, Fifth, Seventh, and 11th Circuits. The Ninth
All right. 7th, 5th. Oh, the 9th got Alaska, huh? All right. Well, I'm not up there.
Circuit Court of Appeals, which presides over California, has recognized the right to record the police and deemed the act constitutionally protected under the First Amendment in the 1995 case
Yeah, I
of
don't know why
Fordyce
people
versus
think you
City of
can't
Seattle.
record the cops,
Although
or where
Officer Romo
cops
may have had
think you can't
reasonable
record
suspicion
them
that Mr.
more
Guevara
accurately.
was a loitering minor, it is clear that Mr. Guevara was engaged in a constitutionally protected activity, which thereby granted him an exception from the loitering code.
If you're,
Yes, we
you're
do.
supposed to be in school.
We are not in school.
Well, I don't know that. So all you have to do is prove that
You-
to me. Then.
No, I told you I'm 19. I don't gotta prove you. He told you he's 21.
He said he's 19.
Because
Hey,
he's
but
not.
you
because
see,
He at
he's
least
not
said his
sketchy
age.
Like you.
That was
I'm
my
not-
only
I'm
big
not
gripe.
recording
Was like you can at
come
least say
out,
your
you
age.
Post up a
If you
Modelo, like,
would have told me, hey, I'm 19, right away.
nah,
I might have said
I don't gotta
okay.
tell you nothing. It's my rights.
Okay. Listen to me. I'm gonna call another unit now.
You can
They're
call
gonna
any-
they're gonna take you to the school now.
What school?
The Jordan.
I don't go to Jordan.
Well, I don't know that.
I don't go to Jordan.
Well, that's where you're gonna end up going unless you show me how old you
All
are.
right, and I'll file a complaint on y'all.
Huh?
I'll file a complaint on y'all for
That's
harassing
fine.
me.
You can.
All
Go
right, and I
ahead.
will.
But they're gonna
It's,
come and
um,
take you anyway.
Some old
So you
bullshit
ID
back and
yourself.
forth.
I don't gotta ID myself.
Okay.
Officer Romo offers Mr. Guevara the ultimatum of presenting his identification or being taken to the nearby high school to verify whether or not he is a student there. But
Which is-
involuntarily transporting
wait, wait,
citizens is a somewhat
Wait. You don't know who this dude is. You don't know how old he is. You just know he looked young with a backpack. He's considering him most likely a suspicious person. So your maneuver is to take him to the nearest school? Cool.
contentious topic within the courtroom. Much of the historical legislation regarding the involuntarily transporting of suspects exists at the state level, but the Supreme Court has explored the issue before in the 1979 case of Dunaway versus New York. Like many of the state-level courts, the Supreme Court subscribed to the notion that transporting citizens against their will constitutes an arrest and must be supported by probable cause. In the case, the court held that the officers who had brought a suspect in for questioning without
Mhm.
probable cause violated his Fourth and Fifth Amendment rights, and
Mhm.
stated that the defendant's detainment and transportation was, quote, indistinguishable from a traditional arrest. In his concurring opinion, Justice Byron R. White emphasized the importance of balancing the interests of police officers with the
They keep
privacy of
using that stock
citizens,
footage
but
of
also
that
noted
that police dude.
defining
It's
a
hilarious.
universal precedent that would apply to most or all circumstances would be difficult. The Dunaway case was cited when the Supreme Court addressed the issue again in the 1983 case of Florida versus Royer and acknowledged that, quote, a police confinement which goes beyond the limited restraint of a Terry investigatory stop may be constitutionally justified only by probable cause. The court went on to reaffirm this decision once again in the 1985 case of Hayes versus Florida. Even if Mr. Guevara was not engaged in a constitutionally
that
protected
vest under the
activity,
shirt
it is
looks crazy.
unlikely that Officer Romo would be within his authority to involuntarily
Dude, just wear the
transport
over the
Mr.
shirt
Guevara
vest,
to the
man.
high
Just
school without legitimate
with the
evidence
pockets.
to support his suspicions.
You look mean out here. You'll be
This
all
one's
right.
better for you.
It's fine, man. Shoot. I know I ain't do nothing wrong. I have no problem. Y'all came up with me.
They're gonna take him to the high school. I want to see if they actually
grabbed
get
me.
him in the
You tried
car
to
and
tell
take
us
him
like
to a school.
Well, you got proof.
No, I
Can you
have to.
imagine
Hey,
that?
what's your name and birthday then?
Why? You see, I know. I'm not doing
Don't
that
swing
either,
your
dude.
feet, dog. They already
Come on.
think you a kid.
know, I have
What
what's
you
your
doing
birthday?
out
You
here?
know
I have
your
rights.
birthday?
You don't have the right to tell you.
You gonna whip out a jar of baby food next? Plead your innocence, huh?
This is my cousin. This is my cousin.
Well, let him talk then.
No,
you
he
can
don't
talk.
have to talk. He can stay right there all he wants.
I didn't say.
I
you
didn't do
can
nothing
talk,
wrong.
though.
Sir, can you
We're
get
not
your guy?
talking.
He came over here and insult me, grabbed my arm, telling me how old I was.
Yeah.
Yeah, that don't mean nothing, though.
Doesn't wanna talk.
Cops will grab you, do whatever,
I go to LBCC.
and their partners will literally just look at him
Now he
or
wants
turn
to
the other
grab
way,
me, tug
or
me.
even worse,
why didn't you tell me
congratulate them,
Because you grabbed me and started tugging
physically
me.
assaulting you for
By the
nothing.
time you come over
Try
to
to
my car, yeah.
intimidate.
How old are you?
I'm 19, sir. And you over here grabbing
Do
me.
you have ID to prove you're 19?
Do I have to show ID if I
Well,
never
I'd like
did
to
it?
know if you're 19. Otherwise, maybe you go to school.
I
right
don't
here
go to
and
school, sir.
Okay,
You
well,
can take my
how
word.
how do I know that?
See,
You look
not-
like you're underage to me. You don't look like you're 19. So,
Alright, that's
That's my
fine, bro.
opinion.
That's fine.
You don't think that a 19-year-old could look 17? Like, it's not unreasonable if y'all think he looks young that he's maybe
Well, I
19.
have a unit coming right
But
now.
is this truancy really this the hot topic right now? Why is there so much
It is harassment. man.
aggression about this?
He
Is it
assaulted me
is it
too.
the truancy or is it the filming?
Nah, I don't gotta go to lawsuit. Well, all right, man.
watch too much YouTube. That's your problem.
Nah. Sure. That's
Where do
what
you
it
live?
is. I ain't gotta tell you that. I live around here though. That's for sure.
So you don't want to tell us your birthday yet. You want to be placed in handcuffs instead.
Yo,
Is
just
that how it's
lead
gonna
it,
go?
dude.
Y'all
That's
want-
how it's gonna
is
go.
it-
I-
I
alright,
can't
then
imagine being a cop and this is the most pressing thing you
y'all
got
wanna harass me and
is
stuff?
a
He assaulted me
supposed
already. It's all
truancy.
good. No, it is assault. It is assault.
From guys
If he
that
comes up to you and just grabs
ain't
you
did
and touches
nothing
you,
else but look young.
Mr. Guevara was handcuffed and placed in a patrol vehicle, but once the
Oh,
officers
see them
confirmed
cuffs
his
coming.
age, he was released. The Fox 11 news team ran a story on the interaction, but no conclusion was mentioned. Beyond that, I was unable to locate any additional information regarding this encounter. So, comment below if you have an update, and I will add it to the description of this video. Overall, the Long Beach police officers get an F for investigating Mr. Guevara while he was engaged in a constitutionally protected activity, misrepresenting the authority of the loitering code, and involuntarily transporting Mr. Guevara to the nearby high school. Mr. Guevara was effectively placed under arrest for looking too young near a school, and this type
Right.
of conduct sets a dangerous precedent for the enforcement of subjective observations. The Supreme Court has clearly established that involuntarily transporting citizens is unconstitutional, and Mr. Guevara's transport would likely have fallen within the scope of those rulings. Many scholars have even made the argument that
What you gonna
daytime
do
and
then?
nighttime
After you
curfews
roll 'em up there, you
restrict
gonna
the
roll 'em
constitutional
back?
rights of minors, but that's a topic for another episode. Perhaps the gravest error of the Long Beach officers was neglecting to consider the entirety of the loitering code and disregarding the fact that Mr. Guevara was exercising his First Amendment right to record the police. Although the officers were well within their authority to make contact with Mr. Guevara, the basis for their detention of him was supported by intuition.
All right, I ain't gonna
rather
stick
than
around
fact,
for the
and
rest of these
circumstances
grades.
surrounding his detainment likely amount to an illegal arrest.
Arrested for sitting on a
Guevara
bench.
gets
That
an-
can't be real. It's got to be more to it than that. I mean, obviously they got that guy for just being too young, but it's got to be more than that. Raycon gonna sponsor this. They can't help themselves.
Welcome to Audit the Audit, where we sort out the who and what and the right and wrong
Here
of
we go.
police interactions. This episode covers identification laws, digital property rights, and emergency commitments, and is brought to us by the Wheat Ridge Police's channel. Be sure to check out the description below and give them the credit that they deserve. Before we dive into the interaction, I want to give a big thanks to the sponsor of this episode, the Commuter 2 speaker from Cove. I've been
that's
using
nice.
the Commuter 2 for a little over a year now.
All
Between
right,
its
so it
amazing
wasn't
sound
Raycon.
quality,
It was a
ease of
different
use, and
audio
small
source.
form factor, there's
These
no
audio
need to
guys, they're all up in the
computer can
YouTube
last for
and
7 hours
podcasting
on a
community.
single charge. It has a water-resistant rating of IPX7 and has
Obvious
a built-in
reasons,
microphone for
obviously.
taking calls. But best of all, the Commuter splits into 2 speakers, giving you full stereo audio.
Yeah.
While
At least you got a little sub. That's cool. A little sub at the bottom beating. I saw it.
When separated, the speakers convert into left and right stereo channels, which makes it perfect for taking on a trip or connecting to your laptop at home. Right now, Cove is offering members of the ATA community a 67% discount when you
Jesus
use
Christ.
code Audit67 at checkout, or click on the link in the description. This
It's gotta be
discount
a
is only valid for 1 month.
67% discount is extreme, right? There's something that's happening, right?
On May 1st, 2021, a 53-year-old man named James was sitting quietly on a bench outside a closed bar while waiting for an Uber at 2:27 a.m. in Wheat Ridge, Colorado, when an officer from the Wheat Ridge Police Department parked his vehicle and approached Mr. James.
How you doing?
How you doing?
What's going on?
Waiting on my Uber.
Waiting for your Uber?
He's been drinking. He's doing the right thing. He's on the bench waiting for his
No, I
Uber.
don't.
He served his country.
I'm not doing
What's the problem?
anything wrong.
Well, you're sitting in front of a closed bar and I can
I'm
see you're
waiting on my
intoxicated.
Uber, my friend.
Let me see your ID.
No,
Okay. We can do this one in 2 ways, sir.
we can
Okay,
do this
I'm being-
one
I'm
of
being
many ways.
I'm being respectful to you.
I'm sitting here waiting on my Uber. I am doing nothing
Show me on your
wrong.
phone that your Uber's coming.
You know what? I want to break out my camera right now.
Go ahead, mine's running
I want
as
to
well.
start filming you.
Mine's running.
Oh,
as well.
he's
I'm
intoxicated,
not
so they're
doing
just
anything
gonna.
wrong.
This is gonna be dicks to him. What I found when
I'm
working
doing
with a lot of
everything
first
right.
responders,
Not drinking,
including
driving.
working in a hospital, was that
And why
people
are
that are
you-
intoxicated,
why are
whether
you
they're being aggressive or not, they're always treated like a nuisance, and it
No,
just
no, you
spirals
are.
You're sitting in front of a
into
closed
what
bar.
you think it's gonna
You are
be from the
messing
jump
with
off.
a Navy veteran that is waiting on an Uber
Sir, I'm going to ask you one
that
more
is
time.
doing
I need to
nothing
know.
wrong.
Can I see your ID?
No,
Sitting on the
you
bench
can't.
You're drunk
while a
in
veteran.
public.
That's a crime,
No,
bro.
I'm not drunk in public.
Give me your ID.
Yeah,
The
you might be
officer
drunk in
demands that
public.
Mr. James show his ID, and Mr. James refuses. Section 16-3-103 of the Colorado Revised Statute states the quote, "A peace officer may stop any person who he reasonably suspects is committing, has committed, or is about to commit a crime, and may require him to give his name and address, identification if available, and an explanation of his actions." In the 2017 case of People versus Reyes Valenzuela, the Colorado Supreme Court held that, quote, "In determining whether an officer had a reasonable articulable suspicion, this court focuses upon whether there were specific and articulable facts known to the officer, which
Like?
taken together with reasonable inferences from these facts, created a reasonable suspicion of criminal activity to justify the intrusion into the defendant's personal security." The court also noted that, quote, "When determining whether reasonable articulable suspicion exists, the relevant inquiry is not whether particular conduct is innocent or guilty, but the degree of suspicion that attaches to particular types of non-criminal acts." In a
Really?
statement
Like
issued,
what?
the
Like how?
Police Department
That seems so
applicants
open to
the department
interpretation,
claimed
like
that the officer was
everything is.
justified in
Like
demanding
there's
Mr. James'
guidelines written
identification because he
for
was
like
outside of a
how you
closed
should
bar that was
rock
the
as a
scene of
police officer,
homicide by
but
stabbing
all
in
of them are
August
just
2020 at 2:46
guidelines and
a.m.
open.
However,
There's
courts
no
have
there's no real
consistently held that
concrete.
individuals'
So at the
mere
end of the
presence at a
day,
location
you could
without
never really
warrant does
nail
not
down
rise
what's
to the level of
lawful and
reasonable suspicion
unlawful
required to
or
justify a
conduct of
Terry stop.
officers
For
until
example,
it
in the
becomes
2000
extreme.
case of Baker versus
Everything
State,
other
the
than
Fifth District
extreme
Court
is
of Appeals
always somewhat of a
determined,
gray
quote,
area
"The fact
that they
that
can
Baker was
just
parked
sort of
late at
explain
night in
themselves
a
out of,
closed business
and
does
that's
not
becoming an
establish
issue,
grounds for a Terry
especially
stop.
because
The
cops
officer
are
had no
inclined to
reasonable
believe
grounds for
cops.
suspicion that the closed business had been or was about to be burgled. Similarly, in the 2013 case of In Re MG, the Court of Appeals of Kansas held that, quote, "An individual's presence in a high crime neighborhood, here a place of business that had been robbed before, is not in itself sufficient to justify an investigative stop." And in the 2003 case of U.S. versus Brown, the United States Court of Appeals for the D.C. Circuit concluded that, quote, quote, Brown's mere presence in the parking lot late at night several hours after a shooting does not meet the standard of articulable suspicion of individualized criminal wrongdoing that Terry requires. While many states have public intoxication laws, in the state of Colorado, there are no laws prohibiting being drunk in public, which means
There's no
that the
public
officer also could not
intoxication laws
detain
in
Mr. James
Colorado?
on suspicion of
I know there's
intoxication.
not many in
Section
Louisiana.
27-81-117 of the Colorado Revised Statutes explicitly prevents political subdivisions from passing local laws that institute criminal or civil penalties against people that are intoxicated in public. Under these circumstances, it seems likely that a court would find the officer did not have the reasonable suspicion necessary to demand Mr. James's ID lawfully.
I'm giving you a lawful order.
You're not getting anything, dude.
Okay. Stand
I
up.
am not doing
Stand up.
anything wrong.
Stand up. Stand up. Stand up. Stand up.
What are you doing? I'm sitting
Put your
here
hands behind
doing
your back.
nothing.
Yep, they're taking him for that ride.
Set your phone down, sir, and put your hand behind your back.
I'm sitting here doing nothing.
Or at least they prepping him for the ride.
Waiting on an Uber.
Two
Are you
victims, sex
kidding
protective
me?
custody.
Huh?
Okay, all I asked for was to see your Uber.
I'm
and
doing
you want to argue,
nothing.
and you're intoxicated.
After Mr. James refuses to show his identification or prove that an Uber was on its way, the officer places Mr. James in handcuffs. In general, police officers do not have the authority to demand to see information or data on your cell phone without a warrant. In the
Right.
2014 case of Riley versus California, the Supreme Court thoroughly addressed privacy rights and cell phones, holding that it was unconstitutional for police officers to search the data on a cell phone that was
Why don't you,
lawfully seized during an
show me
arrest
your
without
Uber
first
ride
obtaining
coming?
a warrant. The court held that while the police could lawfully take the phone itself when its owner was arrested, they could not review the contents of the phone without first obtaining a search warrant. The court determined that the quantity of data available on a cell phone and the extremely detailed and personal nature of the information stored on cell phones made a warrantless search unconstitutional, even in situations when a search of an individual's person would be justified. In reaching this conclusion, the court noted that, quote, our cases have historically recognized that the warrant requirement is an important working part of our machinery of
I mean, there's
government,
other
not
laws about
merely
cell
an
phones and stuff
inconvenience
too.
or
Like,
somehow
even if they
weighed
get
against
the
the claims
ability
of
to
police
search through it,
efficiency.
they
The
can't
decision
compel
also
you to
recognized,
unlock
quote,
it.
we cannot
So
deny
it's
that our
important that
decisions
you have
will
it
have
locked
an
in a
impact
certain
on the
manner or
ability of
something like
law
that,
enforcement to combat
because they can
crime.
force
Cell
open
phones have
phones.
become important tools in
But
facilitating coordination
there are
and
some,
communication among
I
members of
think the
criminal enterprises
biometrics
and can provide
is
valuable
one of the
incriminating
easiest things to
information about
crack. I think a
dangerous criminals.
passcode,
Privacy comes at a
and
cost.
they
Given the
can't
strength
force
of
you to enter a
constitutional
passcode
protections
or
the
something
Supreme
like
Court has
that.
recognized for digital information, it is
You can get the
probable that a
phone,
court would conclude
but
that Mr.
unlocking
James
it,
has
that's
the
on
right
you.
to refuse to show his Uber receipt on his cell phone because the officer did not have a warrant.
Okay, I don't think you're making good choices, sir.
I'm waiting on my Uber,
And all
which is the
sir,
best choice.
Sir, all I was trying to do was verify.
The worst choice
all-
would be
sir,
driving.
Sir, all I
Right.
was trying to do was verify your Uber. Was that right or wrong?
Well, if you unlock me, I'll show you the Uber.
Well, that's what how many
verification.
times did I ask for that, sir? Huh?
Have I done anything illegal?
Well, you're intoxicated in public.
I'm
It's not
sitting
illegal.
on a
Okay, and I'm not-
bench waiting on
Right,
my Uber.
at a closed business in a high crime area.
Waiting on
okay?
my
So,
Uber.
sir, I have no idea who you are or what you're doing, and it's my job to find out. So all I did was wanted to have a conversation with you, and you won't give me any information at all, and it's obvious that you're intoxicated, right?
That is
I don't know
why
who
I
you
am
are and what you're
waiting on
doing, and that's my
Uber.
job to
Right,
find
how many
out. I feel
times
like
did I
that's a
ask you to
broad
see your
statement
Uber? I tell
that
you
is
my
not
life,
accurate.
All right,
and-
well, unlock
and-
me if it's that big a
all
deal,
you
and I'll
wanna-
show you my
and
Uber.
all you want to do is film me and argue with me.
Because he's drunk, and you
I've
know
done
that.
nothing wrong. I'm sitting here minding my own business.
Sir,
True or false?
I'm just doing my job.
You are with a Navy veteran.
Sir, step over here.
Just sitting
step
here
over
minding my
The
own
cop is
business.
polite.
Step over here. Sir, you can't even walk.
I was.
I'm-
sitting here
I'm
minding my own
You can't
business.
even
On the
walk,
fence
sir.
about why
What are you
he's
guys
there,
doing?
but as far as his conduct, since he's been talking to the gentleman, he's been very polite.
No, I'm sitting here minding my own business.
He
What
is
are you
drunk as
guys
fuck too.
doing?
But again, we just discussed how
I'm waiting
being
on
drunk
my
in public is not a
Uber.
crime in
Go
Colorado.
to detox. You
So-
can't even walk.
I was sitting in the chair, not
Sir?
bothering anybody.
Sir, I was trying to be reasonable with you.
Oh my
It's obvious
God,
that you're
dude! I am a
extremely
Navy
intoxicated.
veteran,
Okay, thank you for your service.
and I'm just sitting there minding my own business.
Right, at a closed business. So
and
it's my
waiting
job.
on my Uber.
And all I asked was for you to
Yeah, you
verify.
asked
All I
him, but
you to show me it on your
it's
phone,
still
but
one of
I'm
those
doing
things of
that.
like, did he have to,
Okay, but
like,
you
because he
refuse to
didn't do
do
what
that.
you
So
asked, now he's and now he's in cuffs, even though he didn't necessarily have to do what he asked. You
Sir,
just
I'm
couldn't
sitting at a
prove that he wasn't a criminal.
Uber's
is
gonna
there
be there in
anybody
2 minutes.
But did
sober
you
that can come
prove
get
he
you?
was a criminal?
You're not listening.
Well, I guess you got
You're
48
not, sir.
hours
I'm
after
I called
detaining
an
him to figure
Uber.
that out, huh? Because
Well,
that's the
you
game we
can't
play.
call-
Uber was 2
You-
minutes away
You can't.
before you shook me down.
James, we've been here for 10 minutes. And
Uber
then
still ain't came,
you
though.
can't call Uber. Okay, that's
Where's
not the
my
way.
phone?
That's not the way Uber works. He's got your
Where's
phone.
my phone?
He's got your phone
Right
right there.
Look it up. Whether I call an Uber or not.
You can't call them on the phone.
Did you do it through an app or did you
I
call
did
them?
through the Uber app.
All right, so how do I get into your phone?
6969.
If they're coming, man, I'll release you then. But if not,
6969.
but if they're not,
My guy's the
you have no
best.
choice.
Davey Veteran,
The
he's the
officer
best.
informs Mr. James that he will release him to his Uber driver if one was on the way, but also suggests that he would arrest Mr. James if an Uber was not en route. Section 27-81-111 of the Colorado Revised Statutes authorizes police officers to take an individual into protective custody when they have probable cause to believe that the individual is, quote, under the influence of or incapacitated by substances and clearly dangerous to the health and safety of himself, herself, or others. The provision requires that the individual be taken to an approved treatment facility, but if no such facilities are available, quote, the person may be
Man, it's hot
detained
as
in an
shit in this
emergency
house.
medical facility or
I'd turn
jail,
this heat
but
down.
only for so long as may be necessary to prevent injury to himself, herself, or others, or to prevent a breach of the peace. However, the statute clarifies that, quote, a taking into protective custody under this section is not an arrest, and no entry or other record shall be made to indicate that the person has been arrested or charged with a crime. While
Okay.
The department's official statement about the incident cited this law and claimed that the officer would have been authorized to take Mr. James into protective custody because he, quote, showed signs of intoxication and inability to care for himself. The standard that the statute
Show signs of
requires is that an
intoxication, but I don't know about the
individual
inability to
dangerous
take care of
himself
himself.
or others.
Has he
The
really
only
shown
signs of
that?
intoxication Mr. James showed were slurred speech and slight cognitive impairment. Colorado law does not specifically define what it means to be quote-unquote clearly dangerous in this context, but Section 27-65-102 of the Colorado Revised Statutes defines the term danger to self or others, which is the standard used for emergency mental health detentions. The definition states that an individual constitutes a danger to themselves when, quote, the individual poses a substantial risk of physical harm to himself or herself as manifested by evidence of recent threats of or attempts at suicide or serious bodily harm to himself or herself, and is considered a danger to others when, quote, the individual poses a substantial risk of physical harm to another person or persons as manifested by evidence of recent homicidal or other violent behavior by the person in question, or by evidence that others are placed in reasonable fear of violent behavior and serious physical harm to them as evidenced by a recent overt act, attempt, or threat to do serious physical harm by the person in question. Because
Okay.
individuals cannot be taken into protective custody simply for being intoxicated, and Mr. James did not appear to pose a danger to himself or others, a court
I
would
agree.
likely determine that Mr. James could not have been legally taken into protective custody in this situation.
Listen, fellas.
There's a green button.
I am a former combat medic.
James, thank you
sitting
for your
there,
service.
How do you,
and I'm
how
not
do-
going to lie to you.
how do I go?
6969.
He's in it.
I'm in.
Uber.
Where do I search that? I don't have the
6969, you heard the man.
Mr. James eventually gave the officers permission to look at his phone and verify that an Uber was on the way to pick him up. Mr. James was then uncuffed, and the officers waited with him until the Uber arrived. Mr. James thanked the officers and shook their hands before departing in his Uber. It is unclear
that's
whether
good.
Mr. James filed a complaint or took any follow-up legal action. Overall, the Wheat Ridge officer gets an F for baselessly accusing Mr. James of several irrelevant crimes, detaining Mr. James with no reasonable basis for doing so, and for displaying a fundamental misunderstanding of the Fourth Amendment. Mr. James went out of
Right?
his way to ensure that he got home in a manner that was safe and compliant with the law, and it is difficult to understand why the Wheat Ridge officer went to such great lengths to verify Mr. James's story. The officer could have achieved the very same results of this encounter by simply standing by and observing Mr. James until his Uber arrived, but instead, he chose to force Mr. James to surrender digital data that the officer had absolutely no right to. The officer also accused Mr. James of being drunk in public while on private property and attempted to criminalize nearly every element of this encounter as he escalated.
Oh, I didn't even think about that.
This encounter
That the bar is actually private property.
To exercise his community caretaking function by standing by with Mr. James until his Uber arrived. But the officer turned what could have been a chance to build a positive relationship with a member of the public into a full-scale detention. As for Mr. James, it is difficult to assign an accurate grade to an individual.
My man was drunk and he was rolled up on by the cops. He ain't did nothing wrong but try to drink and get home. He's by himself too, so that's even worse. Who knows if he's going home to a family or something like that. This is a combat veteran, a Navy medic who's drinking heavily at a bar, and he ain't got nobody to come pick him up in the middle of the night. On top of that, he then gets rolled up on and harassed by the police. How to turn a simple. All right. No, this ain't gonna be good, and I know it. Arrested for laughing at a cop. All right, here we go. Come on, give it up. Includes paid promotion. Raycons. Maybe 2 of those cold videos.
To Audit the Audit, where we sort out the who and
Raycon ain't gonna let people get over like that.
Interactions. This episode covers the First Amendment, flashing headlights, and retaliatory arrests, and is brought to us by the Civil Rights Lawyers channel. Be sure to check out the description below and give them the credit that they deserve.
Civil Rights Lawyer? All right, bro.
I want to give a big thanks to the sponsor of this episode, Raycon.
Ah, there you go.
Perfect gift. Raycons are the way to go. They're wireless earbuds.
Cove got one. Y'all got the rest.
Sound, useful features, comfortable fit, and up to 54 hours of battery life. With Raycon, you get quality audio at half the price of other premium audio brands and a variety of colors and styles to choose from. If you need some help with the selection, Raycon's website offers a holiday gift guide for everyone in your life, such as the coworker, fitness lover, or gamer. Or knock it out all at once and get 30% off by shopping Raycon's holiday bundles. My favorite is the audio
Raycon.
The everyday earbuds and everyday headphones. Raycons make the perfect holiday gift for everyone, from the audio enthusiast to the casual listener. And they're offering members of the ATA community a limited.
It is everybody, audio enthusiasts and casual listeners. There's nobody else in the middle. Just them, right?
Right, guys? And use code EARLYVF to get 20% off site-wide, or save even bigger and get 30% off Raycon's exclusive.
I'm buying a pair of Raycons right now.
There will also be different.
Can't believe it's taking me this long. I'm all over it.
Keep the description box updated with the latest offers, but just so you know, you can always go to buyraycon.com/audit to get the best deals available on Raycon. Thanks again to Raycon for sponsoring this episode.
Thanks,
On
Raycon.
May 13th, 2022, Corporal J.D. Ellison of the Nicholas County Sheriff's Department pulled over a driver for flashing his headlights to warn oncoming traffic of a speed trap in Somersville, West Virginia. The driver, who we will refer to as Mr. Headlights, stopped on the side of the road, and Corporal Ellison approached the driver's side of the vehicle.
That was pretty stupid, wasn't it?
What's that?
Flashing your lights at everybody to let them know that law enforcement was sitting there running radar.
Is that what I did? Is that a crime?
Yeah.
It is? I didn't know that.
You got your license registration proof?
Yeah, I did.
Why would you do that? You're flashing your high beams at people to...
Because he's trying to be friendly to other drivers. Maybe y'all haven't quite figured out yet, but y'all, you're never truly a welcome presence on the road, because you don't seem to catch the people that I want you to catch, and you always seem to catch me. So, yeah.
Daytime or nighttime.
I didn't know. I mean, yeah, nighttime I understand, but daytime I don't know.
Corporal Ellison claims it is a crime for individuals to flash their headlights, and he eventually issues Mr. Headlights a citation for violating Section 17C-15-20.
I know it's a crime to flash your headlights if the lights are off or something like that.
Flashing lights are prohibited on motor vehicles. However, it should be noted that the use of the plural verb are instead of the singular verb is indicates that the word flashing is an adjective that modifies the noun lights and not a verb. In other words, the statute prohibits motor vehicles from having flashing lights, but does not prohibit motorists from flashing their lights. Another
Okay.
important factor to consider when analyzing the meaning of this statute is that it is located in Article 15 of the West Virginia Traffic
Say that
Code.
one more time. Let's
Consider
go
when
back one more
analyzing the
again.
meaning of this statute is that it is located in Article 15 of the West Virginia Traffic Code, which focuses exclusively on the required and prohibited equipment that must or cannot be installed on certain vehicles. It seems clear from the context of the statute that it bans the installation of lights that automatically flash, but does not prohibit a driver from manually flashing lights that are typically static, such as
Okay.
headlights. For instance, the statute creates an exception to the general prohibition against flashing lights, stating that, quote, any vehicle as a means for indicating right or left turn, or any vehicle as a means of indicating the same as disabled or otherwise stopped for an emergency, may have blinking or flashing lights. This section of the statute inarguably refers to turn signals and hazard lights, both of which flash automatically once they're activated. Similarly, the statute also allows for blue flashing
I wish people would
warning
remember
lights on
that.
police vehicles,
How about we start
red
using turn
flashing
signals
warning
again?
lights for ambulances,
Bring that back.
firefighting vehicles, school buses, and other emergency vehicles, and yellow or amber flashing warning lights for tow trucks, postal service vehicles, and other emergency or service vehicles. The pattern is clear. Whenever the statute mentions a flashing light,
All right.
it is referring to a light that intermittently and automatically illuminates. Given this context, it seems unlikely that a reasonable court would conclude that Mr. Headlights was in violation of this statute, as his vehicle was not equipped with any flashing lights.
I'm sure I could articulate some other kind of driving charge in there for doing that too.
Mm-hmm.
That's pretty crappy.
Yeah, I apologize.
I don't think it's crappy, bro. If you weren't a cop, you'd appreciate it.
I'm just gonna call
Only people that don't appreciate it are cops. So, a small amount of you guys.
Just you can hang tight, listen to what he says. All right, sir, there's your stuff back there. And I wrote you 2 citations today. First one being special restrictions on lamps, which you can read that code, and it says no flashing lights shall be on a vehicle. And at that point,
He ain't laughed yet. As soon as he laugh, he gonna pull him out of that car.
It's unauthorized.
Well, under the Constitution, it's protected in the First Amendment. But I'm gonna look into it.
That's in Tennessee.
Yeah, I'm gonna look into it. I'm gonna
Yeah.
see about West Virginia.
Yeah.
'Cause it's free speech, you know.
Yeah,
You
it's not
honestly, no
illegal
matter
to
what
do
state
that.
you're in, when you get
To
something, you
flash a
should look
horn,
into it.
But it's illegal to high beam, and it is legal to have flashing lights on your vehicle, not being an emergency vehicle.
Mr. Headlights argues that he has a constitutional right under the First Amendment to flash his headlights in order to communicate with other drivers. Although the issue has not been considered by the Supreme Court or reviewed by a considerable number of lower courts, several courts have determined that flashing headlights to warn drivers approaching in the opposite direction about a speed trap is expressive conduct that is protected by the First Amendment. As the U.S. District Court for the
Wow,
Western District of
okay.
Wisconsin summarized in the 2019 case of Obrecht versus Splinter, the First Amendment protects, quote, conduct, symbols, and nonverbal communication that express or convey a particularized message reasonably understood by viewers. For this reason, the court determined that, quote, although the law is far from clear on this issue, the plaintiff, who was stopped and cited for flashing his headlights, had a plausible claim for relief under the First Amendment. In reaching this decision, the court noted that, quote, at least 2 state circuit courts have also found that drivers have a constitutional right to flash their headlights, including the 2003 case of State versus Walker, where the Tennessee Circuit Court in Williamson County accepted a First Amendment defense to the charge of knowingly interfering with an officer from an individual who flashed their headlights to warn oncoming motorists about a speed trap. The court also relied on the 2014 case of Ellie versus City of Ellisville, in which the U.S. District Court for the Eastern District of Missouri recognized the action of flashing headlights as protected expressive conduct, and issued a preliminary injunction forbidding the Ellisville Police Department from continuing its, quote, policy and custom of having its police officers pull over, detain, and cite individuals who are perceived as having communicated to oncoming traffic by flashing their headlamps and then prosecuting and imposing fines upon those individuals due to the chilling effect of this practice on free speech. The Ellie court reasoned that, quote, even assuming that plaintiff or another driver is communicating a message that one should slow down because a speed trap is ahead and discovery or apprehension is impending, that conduct is not illegal, and concluded that the ordinance that the plaintiff was charged with violating, which prohibited the use of, quote, alternately flashing warning signals on motor vehicles, quote, was clearly inapplicable to the expressive conduct at issue. Although there is limited case law on this topic, and the precedent that we have discussed would not be binding on a West Virginia court, there is certainly a strong argument that Mr. Headlights was engaged in protected expressive conduct when he communicated with other drivers by flashing his headlights.
Huh?
To read up on his audit, the audit guy.
And
I
could
don't know
take
who
you to
he
jail
is.
today for your unsigned
Holy
registration
shit,
card,
can he audit
but
the
I'd charge you
audits?
a citation for that. That's actually up to 6 months in jail. You think it's funny, sir?
I'll take the ticket, sir.
I know, but do you think this
I'll
is
take
funny?
this. I'm allowed to laugh. I can laugh all I want.
Go ahead and step back here for me.
Wow.
Sir, I'm asking you to
Wow, this is the thing that gets him?
Yes, sir,
Because he
you are.
giggled a little bit. The dude's not wrong. He hasn't been wrong about many things.
Place your hands behind your back for
Are
me.
you serious?
Yes, sir. Place your hands behind your back for
Oh,
me.
man, you're serious, brother.
I'm not your brother.
Believe me, you're not.
Yeah, I'll never be your brother. I'll never be your brother.
Exactly. You'll never be my brother. Just be careful.
Why? Because he laughed and flashed his lights?
Don't jerk away from me.
Just be careful.
Don't jerk away from me, sir.
Just be careful.
Don't jerk away from me.
My wallet is in the car.
Okay, I don't want you to jerk away from me
I was
right
going
there.
away from the traffic.
No, I was putting you in front of my car,
Okay.
which is away from traffic.
You're arresting me for laughing.
No,
I didn't do anything.
I'm arresting you for unsigned registration.
Okay, all right, that's fine.
Okay? Just stand right there.
Oh my god! All right, this ain't looking good for my guy. You looking like a goober, dude. You get dude.
Corporal Ellison claims that he's arresting him for having an unsigned registration card.
What is up with the ego of people who feel like they have authority granted to them by someone else? Like, as an officer, it's not even your authority. It's authority granted to you by someone else. So the ego trip for your power that you don't have that's invested in you annoys the shit out of me.
And not his protected speech. According to Section 17A-3-13 of the West Virginia Code, quote, every registration card shall at all times be carried in the vehicle to which it refers, or shall be carried by the person driving or in control of such vehicle, who shall display the same upon demand of a police officer or any officer or employee of the division. Notably, there's no mention of the registration card needing to be signed. However, the prior version of this statute explicitly required that, quote, every owner upon receipt of a registration card shall write his signature
So he's trying to
thereon
talk to this
with
guy
pen
about the
and ink
laws and
with
shit,
his
but
prior.
he's
This
outdated.
amendment was
The
enacted
cop.
by House Bill 4345, which was passed on April 19th, 2022, but did not go into effect until June 5th, 2022. Therefore, at the time of this encounter, the updated law had been passed but was not yet effective.
Okay.
So Mr. Headlights was technically required to have signed his registration card. Under Section 17A-3-1 of the West Virginia Code, quote, any person violating the provisions of this article is guilty of a misdemeanor, and upon conviction thereof shall be fined not more than $500. As we have discussed before on ATA, the Supreme Court held in the 2001 case of Atwater versus City of Lago Vista that the Fourth Amendment does not forbid a warrantless arrest for a minor criminal offense, such as a misdemeanor punishable only by a fine, concluding that, quote, if an officer has probable cause to believe that an individual has committed even a very minor criminal offense in his presence, he may, without without violating the Fourth Amendment, arrest the offender. Accordingly, it is highly likely that a court would conclude that Corporal Ellison would be within his constitutional authority to arrest Mr. Headlights for his unsigned registration card. Likewise, although Corporal Ellison undoubtedly chose to arrest Mr. Headlights because he laughed at him, a court would most likely reject a First Amendment retaliation claim against Corporal Ellison based on this encounter. As the Supreme Court explained in the 2019 case of Nieves versus Bartlett, quote, "The First Amendment prohibits government officials from subjecting an individual to retaliatory actions for engaging in protected speech."
Oh, yeah. You tell them that. You cuss at them, you laugh at them, they'll actually try to come get you as if you're not allowed, as if they're not human beings. You know what I'm saying? Like, what do you think because you're in that uniform that I can't laugh at you?
However,
You don't think
court
that you're a
also
joke?
noted because,
You know?
quote, "It is particularly difficult to determine whether the adverse government action was caused by the officer's malice or the plaintiff's potentially criminal conduct. When reviewing a First Amendment retaliatory arrest claim, a court must consider, quote, whether the circumstances viewed objectively justify the challenged action, and that, quote, a particular officer's state of mind is simply irrelevant, and it provides no basis for invalidating an arrest. For this reason, the court concluded that, quote, a plaintiff pressing a retaliatory arrest claim must plead and prove the absence of probable cause for the arrest. Here, as long as Mr. Headlights' registration card was actually unsigned, the court would presumably determine that Corporal Ellison had probable cause to arrest Mr. Headlights, and therefore it is highly unlikely that Mr. Headlights would be able to succeed in a First Amendment retaliation claim, despite the fact that Corporal Ellison appears to have arrested him for protected First Amendment speech. Still, it may be possible for Mr. Headlights to succeed in a First Amendment retaliation case in this situation, as his chances of victory would likely be improved by arguing that the traffic stop itself was unlawful retaliation for flashing his headlights.
Right. Everything this cop has been doing has been for revenge. From the stop to the putting in cuffs, everything has been about revenge. It's unfortunate.
Hang tight right here in front of my vehicle for me.
Corporal Ellison eventually released Mr. Headlights and
Of course
allowed
she
him
did.
to leave with a citation. Instead of paying the ticket, Mr. Headlights fought both charges against him in the Nicholas County Magistrate Court in Somersville, West Virginia. He represented himself in the proceedings, and on October 4th, 2022, Magistrate Michael Hanks convicted Mr. Headlights of the Special Restrictions on Lamps violation while dismissing the charge for the unsigned registration card. Overall, Corporal Ellison gets an F for pulling over Mr. Headlights for engaging in legal behavior, threatening to arrest Mr. Headlights for simply failing to sign his vehicle registration.
It's crazy because he was mad at him. He was going to find something to make this guy pay. He didn't see it. He didn't get any jail time. He didn't have to get in the back of a truck, but $500 to $600, man, just because you're upset that I'm flashing my headlights is insane, because that's what started it all. A lot of y'all, man. All right, this would be my last one. I'm kind of tired, man.
Where we sort out the who and what and the right and wrong of police interactions. This episode covers obstruction, the right to film police officers, and warrantless arrests, and is brought to us by the Civil Rights Lawyers channel. Be sure to check out the description below and give them the credit that they deserve. On August 7th, 2020, deputies Dalton Martin and Jordan Horn of the McDowell County Sheriff's Office in West Virginia approached 66-year-old Donnie Hairston and his 63-year-old wife Ventress while they were sitting on the front porch of the home they rented from former military police officer Jason Tart. The deputies asked the Hairstons about 4 alleged marijuana plants that were found in some overgrown brush at a nearby property owned by a third party, and they both denied any involvement. When the deputies continued to question the Hairstons, walk around the property, and look through windows, they called Mr. Tart, who walked over to the Hairstons' residence from his nearby home. The interaction that followed was captured on Deputy Martin's body camera.
These people in their 60s.
Because in the season that we're living in, I think it's important that I have your names.
What do you mean, man?
A lot of crazy stuff going on. And so having your name makes me feel more secure. As I said, we came here June 28th. You know, we're actually new here.
Okay.
And for the police officers in this area to come up and say, are you growing marijuana? That is preposterous to me.
Right. So she's trying to figure
Just a
out,
question.
like, you just moved over here. Now you're getting harassed about growing weed.
My only question, use your names just so it's okay in my own heart and mind. And when I say the season we're living in, you know the season we're living in.
Y'all concerned about something over here at this house?
This house?
No, that house.
Yes.
What's the problem?
Who lives there?
Mr. Ferguson, he's probably there now. He's 79.
Okay. All right. What's your name, sir?
You come knock on the door.
Tart.
Jason Tart.
Tart.
And what do you mean by the season we're living in, ma'am?
Oh, here we go.
Sir.
What do you need? You got any questions for me?
No, I'll collect some information from you in a minute, your name and date of birth and such.
What do you need my information for?
You own these two homes, correct?
What
Okay,
these two homes got to do with that?
These two homes is near that marijuana grow, so I'd just like to have your name.
You know how many people go through here?
I understand.
That's not going to do you one bit of good.
Okay. Well, sir, I'm going to need your name and date of birth, and I have that.
I feel comfortable giving you my name.
Why is that cop on the
This is a
right?
criminal investigation. You own these two homes.
He looked
so
like
by law,
he's
you
got
do
a
have to give your name and
1,000-yard
date of birth.
stare.
Gives you a reason, yes, you do.
He looks young.
Because of the marijuana grow.
It's not on my property.
Okay, well, again, I have reason to believe that these two homes here that you own is related to that marijuana grow. So you have to give me your name and date of birth by law.
The deputies informed Mr. Tart that he is required by law to give his name and date of birth. West Virginia does not have a separate stop and identify statute that allows officers to arrest individuals for failing to identify themselves in certain situations. Rather, officers often use the state's obstruction statute to arrest individuals who refuse to identify themselves when they are required to do so. According to Section 61-5-17,
Oh, we ain't about to go through all
quote,
this.
a person who by threats, menaces,
Not
acts,
this time.
or otherwise.
Here we go.
While the deputies did communicate a reason for requesting Mr. Tart's name by claiming that they needed it due to the proximity of the properties he owned to the alleged marijuana plants, the Fourth Circuit Court of Appeals, which has jurisdiction over West Virginia, determined in the 2021 case of Wingate versus Fulford that the application of a local stop and identify ordinance was unconstitutional, quote, when applied outside the context of a valid investigatory stop, and that, quote, a valid investigatory stop supported by Terry-level suspicion is a constitutional prerequisite to enforcing stop and identify statutes.
I don't quite
Applying
understand
this
that.
reasoning, it is likely that a court would find that
I'll look it up.
deputies could not constitutionally arrest Mr. Tart for refusing to identify himself in this situation, although the case law establishing this was not issued until after this incident occurred. It should also be noted that Mr. Tart did provide his name when the deputies first asked, and because the case law likewise does not authorize an arrest for refusing to provide a date of birth, it is likely that a court would conclude that Mr. Tart's conduct did not rise to the level of obstruction.
Go get a pen and piece of paper.
Reason to believe what? Why? Because these houses are here. Do you understand that there's a lot of traffic going through here?
Since we've lived here, people come up here and they park there and we don't know where the hell they go, and then they come back out.
I don't have a problem giving you my information. I'm
Okay, well, that's all I need. It doesn't have to be an argument. I mean, just give me your name and date of birth, dude. It's easy.
It's gotta be ain't gotta be an argument. You don't have to ask for his stuff.
Well, we're just making sure of that.
Well, you scared me. I mean,
Scared you?
Who says that? Who
By asking you a question?
Who comes up and asks? That's crazy.
And it scared you?
I'm trying to understand what
it scared you.
You're a police officer. You're a white young police officer, and these are 60-year-old African Americans.
Scared you because I
Yes,
asked you a question is ridiculous.
they're scared. Yes.
Wait.
First name.
It's ridiculous to you, sir.
Yes, ma'am.
But it's not ridiculous.
Your
to
first
me.
name.
I'm not giving you my information.
Sir, if you refuse to give me your information, I'm going to arrest you.
That's fine. My property has nothing to do with any marijuana whatsoever. You're going to arrest me if I don't give you my name and date of birth.
It's obstructing an officer.
How?
Because you're hindering me from doing my job. You're hindering
How
me
am
from...
I hindering you from doing your
Sir,
job if it's
If it's not even on his property.
Last chance to give me your name and date of birth, sir.
How am I hindering you?
Sir, last chance to give me your name and date of birth.
How am I hindering you?
Place your hands behind your back. Place your hands behind your back. Are you going to give me your name and date of birth?
Take me to jail. You're right. I'm hindering you from doing your job. Please.
I'll see if I can find you my name first.
No, I'm hindering you from doing your job.
Really going out off the
He already knew what it was. You're trying to intimidate him and do all types of shit. And then when it's time for you to arrest him,
Y'all need to go inside. Again, you two go inside. Go inside.
I'm afraid.
Go
now,
inside.
to tell you the truth.
Go inside.
On my own porch?
No, go inside as of right now.
Tell me why.
Go inside.
What are you doing,
Step off
man?
the porch. Step off the porch.
I'll step off.
Go inside.
What are you doing? This is unnecessary for
Sir,
you to be
go
doing
inside.
This. He's standing on his own porch.
Go inside.
Don't come in my house.
Go inside. Step back. Go inside.
Look,
Thank
yeah,
you.
that's completely uncalled for.
When Mr. Hairston starts filming the interaction between the deputies and Mr. Tart, Deputy Martin forces the Hairstons into their home, pushing Mr. Hairston into his doorway and closing the door behind him.
Oh, this is fucking awful.
Preventing him from continuing to record the encounter. While many federal circuits have acknowledged that the First Amendment protects the right to film the police and the performance of their duties, the Fourth Circuit, which includes West Virginia, has not. In the 2009 case of Chemesky versus Houck, the Fourth Circuit Court of Appeals that the First
Wait, let's see
Amendment
where I'm
protects
at.
the right to film the
Wow.
the Fourth Circuit, which includes West Virginia, has not. In the 2009 case of Chemesky versus Houck, the Fourth Circuit Court of Appeals held that an individual's First Amendment right to record police activities on public property was not clearly established in the circuit. However, because the Chemesky decision did not weigh in on whether such a right existed, the state of the law regarding
All right, here we go.
such a right was clearly established at the time of this encounter.
Come on.
Look,
Walk.
man, don't
Walk.
listen.
Sir,
You don't
stop.
have to listen,
You're
man.
being
Listen.
recorded.
Listen. This
Just
is
walk.
listen.
Walk.
Listen.
Walk.
Listen. I
Sir,
can
walk
walk. I
towards
can
the car.
walk
Okay,
without
well,
you
walk.
putting your damn hands on
Walk
me. You
to the
understand?
Either you
I'm
arresting
not
him or
breaking
you
the law.
not. You can't just grab.
Well,
Yo.
Don't
Sir,
put
you're
your
being
damn
recorded.
hands on me. I give you no reason to
Yo,
touch
this
me.
is
I'm
terrible.
going to arrest you then. Place your hands behind
Arrest
your
him
back.
then.
Uncalled
All right then.
Place your hands behind your back.
Put your hand behind
Place your hands behind your back.
Listen.
Look, just relax, okay?
Listen.
Just relax.
Place your hands behind
okay?
your back. Please place your hands
Just
behind your back.
do
My
it, man.
hand is behind my.
Place your
It
hands
only
behind
takes
your
Just
one
do
of
it,
them.
man,
Place
because
your
this
Let him do it.
this guy is on a
Take your
power
hands
trip.
off.
He's
That's fine.
tripping.
Let him
He's
do it.
young. Everything you say has set him off.
Deputy Martin initiates an arrest against Mr. Tart on the porch by ordering him to place his hands behind his back. He then orders him to step down, and Deputy Horn handcuffs and arrests him in the driveway area immediately in front of the home. In general, the Supreme Court has long recognized that the land immediately surrounding and associated with the home, known as the curtilage, is considered part of the home itself for Fourth Amendment purposes. The court held in the 2021 case of Longa versus California that without other exigent circumstances, the pursuit of a fleeing misdemeanor suspect does not justify an officer's warrantless entry into a home or its curtilage. Further, in the 2018 case of Collins versus Virginia,
So he's already
when a law enforcement
wilding.
officer
You can
physically
walk up to the
intrudes
front
on
door, but you
curtilage
can't
to
be
gather
on people's
evidence, a
curtilage.
search within the meaning of the Fourth Amendment has occurred. Such conduct, thus, is presumptively unreasonable absent a warrant. Based on this precedent, it would seem that officers cannot arrest an individual in the curtilage of their both decided well before Longa versus California and Collins versus Virginia, so it is on this precedent. However, because the Longa case involved an entry to a garage rather than a yard or porch, and the Collins case involved a search rather than a seizure, it is also possible that a court would distinguish this situation from those decisions and hold that the location of Mr. Tart's arrest did not violate the Fourth Amendment.
Mm-hmm.
10-4, he owns two properties right here on this Baptist Drive road. We located a marijuana grow probably not 100 foot, 50 foot from this last property of his, and he just won't give us his name, date of birth.
10-4, male, white male, black man.
Black male.
After placing Mr. Tart in the back of the police cruiser and radioing in his arrest, Deputy Martin gathered the alleged marijuana plants and placed them in the trunk of the vehicle, presumably to take to the station as evidence. Mr. Tart was charged with obstruction of a law enforcement officer, but the case was dismissed by the prosecuting attorney on October 28, 2020, because Deputy Martin failed to appear in court. On August 9, 2022, Mr. Tart and the Hairstons filed a federal lawsuit against the deputies, and as of the date of writing this episode, the case is still pending. Overall,
Ooh, I
Deputy
want to know what
Martin
happened.
and Deputy Horn get an F. For episode, the case is still pending.
And when you look at it, when you look at what happened, that cop will see nothing because he's just trying to do his job. He can be a dick. He can be an asshole. He can roll up to you when you ain't did nothing, but they will always, always have my guy's back. So you got to eat that. Sad, but true. Got to eat that. All right, let's see. Let's look it up. We got any results yet? Nope. Not that I saw. Just out there. Dude, courts take forever unless you're, you know, waiting to be sentenced. Even then, sometimes it's like 6 months, dude. Looking up more, seeing if I can. Oh. My guy had to pay $400 just to file this. Damn. All right. Well.
Overall, Deputy Martin and Deputy Horn get an F for maintaining a hostile and aggressive demeanor throughout the encounter, arresting Mr. Tart for refusing to provide his name when he had already provided it, and preventing Mr. Hairston from filming their arrest of Mr. Tart by forcing him into his own home when there were clearly no safety concerns. Although it is possible that the officers will be granted qualified immunity for at least some of their actions in this encounter, it is important to note that this does not mean they behaved professionally, or even that they did not violate Mr. Tart's or the Hairston's constitutional rights. It should not be forgotten that the deputies' behavior towards the Hairstons caused them to fear for their safety, and the deputies' failure to demonstrate any empathy or understanding as to why the Hairstons might feel that way can only be characterized as a willful refusal to acknowledge the realities of the current state of police-citizen relations. Mr. Tart and the Hairstons get an A for remaining relatively calm and polite throughout the encounter, attempting to exercise their constitutional rights, and taking appropriate legal action after the interaction. While issues of qualified immunity may pose difficulties in their pending litigation against the deputies, I commend Mr. Tart and the Hairstons for having the courage to initiate a lawsuit after having their rights infringed upon. And it will be interesting to see how all of the legal issues involved are resolved. I would also like to acknowledge Mr. Tart in particular for his willingness to be arrested for standing up for the Constitution. And
right, he said, arrest me then.
Let us know if there is an interaction or legal topic you would like us to discuss in the comments below. Thank you for watching, and don't forget to check out my second channel for even more police interaction content.
All right, y'all. Short night, but I wanted to show up, be around. It's been kind of dragging today. I wouldn't exactly say I'm not feeling well, but I'm just, you know, I don't know. You ever had one of those days where you just feel really lethargic? You know what I'm saying? I'm kind of having one of those right now today. Kind of real tired, hard to get things going. I knocked out my homework, did a few other things that I was supposed to do, but honestly, the things that I want to do were definitely not high on my list, because I just didn't have the energy to do them. No video games for me tonight, folks. Probably gonna tuck it in, go in early. We'll see. But yo, these are some crazy stories. Definitely gonna watch some more of these. Been a long time since I've did the variety portion of my variety streaming, so YouTube night was definitely needed. And yeah, man, this shit is crazy. There's so much stuff that happens between officers and civilians that I'm very surprised that civilians don't take their own safety a lot more serious and arm themselves with the knowledge to defend themselves against the police. It's so sad that I just had to say that, but the truth of it is that you cannot out physical these guys. They'll make you pay, whether you're right or not. They're the biggest gang in the country. There's nothing you can do about it, right? And I say this as a guy who worked alongside of them. I'm not saying they're the biggest gang, like they're the worst people on the planet, but a gang is a gang, man. And even members that are a part of it can lose their way to mass hysteria sometimes. So it's always important that the first things first, that you learn the laws of the state that you are in or frequent. I'm not saying know it back to front like the Bible, but at least understand where you're going, what you're getting into. And when you have an interaction with a police officer, be armed with some sort of knowledge that keeps you safe or keeps them on the right side of things. Now, a crooked cop will do what they do. It's like a corrupt plumber or a corrupt mechanic who will break something and then tell you, you know, it's going to be X amount of Z to fix it because we just found that it was broken. You know, no matter what position you're in, corruption sucks, but it's something in particular about the executive and the legislative departments of our government. When corruption enters there, it gets bad because you get a lot of control over people's life and freedom, and it gets rough for people, man. So I'm definitely going to watch some more of these, arm myself with more knowledge. I'm not only watching the ones where the cops kind of look wild and silly. I've been watching a few different ones. I've watched a handful of them where, you know, one cop steps in and arrests another cop. I like to see that, especially if they're not acting in a lawful manner. And that's what you want out of your police officers. You want them to be upstanding and honest. And that's all we ask for. We don't ask for perfection. We don't ask for anything beyond what is humanly possible. But all we're asking as citizens in this country, of whatever state you're in, is that your police force, they uphold the law, they stand next to it, and they're just not dicks, man. Like, you can do this job without being a dick. I promise you. It's a possible thing. You can do it without being a dick. But yeah. All right, y'all. I'm out. Thanks for watching. Later days.